It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation. The Church of the Reformation, the Church of Sardis. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are going to be talking about a church that is essentially dead. It is the zombie apocalypse church.
Yes, a small remnant in there.
Tiny remnant.
Yes.
And we're going to explain that in just a few minutes. But why don't we start out? First of all, I want to thank Cindy, my friend Cindy, who picked out this dress. So thank you very much. I'm wearing it in her honor because she's awesome. She also picked out this necklace.
She's got very good taste. She knows your taste very well, knows what looks good on you.
She actually knows me better than I know myself. You want to start out by reading third chapter?
Yeah, we are into Revelation chapter 3 now as the letters to the churches, the angels of the churches continue.
We're crawling our way through the book of Revelation, and we're doing it that way for a reason. We want to make sure that we, to the best of our ability, we won't exhaust everything in there, but we're trying to find the highlights to help you understand the book a little bit better.
Absolutely. So Revelation chapter 3 begins with, at verse 1, as the letter continues. And to the angel of the church in Sardis write, the words of him who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know your works. You have the reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your works complete in the sight of my God. Remember then what you received and heard. Keep it and repent. If you will not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what hour I will come against you. Yet you have still a few names in Sardis, people who have not soiled their garments, and they will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. The one who conquers will be clothed thus in white garments, and I will never blot his name out of the book of life. I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
Wow.
This is the one church, there's no commendation here. This is the first church we've encountered where Jesus didn't have anything good to say about the church.
No, he really doesn't. The closest he comes is that there are a few in your congregation who are unspoiled, who really are awake. But most of them are clearly, as I said, zombie church. He says they're dead.
Yes. And the reason I began this program by saying Church of the Reformation is we talked about the ages of the church as we have over the previous weeks. This church, for those who look at the churches as symbols of the ages of the church since the resurrection of Jesus, would point to Sardis generally and say that the age of Sardis began about the time Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the door of the church in Wittenberg in October 31st of 1517, and would take it forward from 1517 to the revival that took place in the UK and in the United States, or the colonies at that time.
I was going to say it led to the colonies, led to the Puritans moving over there.
Right, with preachers like Jonathan Edwards and so on. So anyway, there are differences on the dates, and I think we should make clear as we talk about these representative ages that church history is a lot more nuanced and complex than being able to just kind of very neatly cut and divide and say, okay, here are the 7 ages, and they began on this day, these dates, and ended on these dates, because there are still aspects of all of these churches that still exist to this day.
Yeah, it's the same as saying, okay, the war started here and ended here.
Right.
You don't know that because the lead up to a war is sometimes years in the making.
Right. And for example, a great example is World War II, which was essentially a continuation of World War I, which is essentially a continuation of what, the Crimean War?
Yes, in many ways it was
Yeah.
a continuation of the Crimean War, which in some ways was just built upon the Napoleonic Wars.
Right. And we see that when we've been seeing that in the research we've been doing over the last few years as we dig into church history, as we dig into the history of Israel, we find out that there is a lot more overlap between what the Israelites believed and what their neighboring Amorites and Egyptians and Hittites and Hurrians believed. It's more complex and nuanced than we've been taught.
Well, that is so true. Let's discuss the city itself.
Right. What do we know about Sardis?
Well, to begin with, Sardis was the capital of the Lydian Empire.
Lydia was one of the main political powers in the centuries leading up to and in the century or two after the birth of Jesus.
Yes, and I would venture to say that most people have never heard of the Lydian Empire,
Right.
but they've heard of its second king, Croesus.
Oh, the old
Rich
saying.
as.
Yeah, rich as Croesus.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of us grew up just thinking, well, must be some guy that my dad heard of somewhere.
I thought it was just a joke. I really did. I had no idea until I started digging into history that there was a king called Croesus, and he had his capital in Sardis. And let me explain why. Sardis was near a river, the Hermes, was that what it's called?
Hermes, yeah.
Hermes. And therefore it had access to all of the river traffic.
Actually,
trade.
a tributary of the Hermes called the Pactolus River.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah.
And it sat on a granite outcrop over a fertile valley. So we have a river, we have agriculture, and we have protection for your military.
We saw a site similar to that, passed by it, but it was pointed out by our tour guide, Yeshai Avital, who's an amazing tour guide.
Oh,
and we'll
yeah,
show you a
yeah.
little bit of some of the things you'll see with our Israel tour in 2020 a little later in this program.
I love the way you do this
Yes.
because it is really.
But after we visited Gilgal Rephaim, we passed a place called Gamla,
Yes.
which is east of the Sea of Galilee. And very similarly, it's on an outcrop that is surrounded by very high cliffs on three sides, like Smyrna.
Yes, very much. Well, Smyrna had a reputation for being unconquerable. You could not take sort of like Masada. The Romans got there and said, how are we going to get up there? We got to go more than just one person at a time, or they'll just kick us off as we get up there. So people weren't able to, the armies weren't able to climb because it looked like it had no way to climb up there.
Right, and the one entry from land was heavily defended, walls.
Very heavily defended.
Yeah.
Now, the Lord talks about, and we're going to really cover this more in depth, but it's interesting that he says, if you will not wake up, I will come like a thief. That's an echo of two invasions that came like a thief in the night.
Right.
The first one was Cyrus,
Cyrus the Great, the Persians.
who had encamped around Sardis, wanted to take it over, could not get his military men up there. One night, one of his soldiers noticed that a guard on the top had dropped his helmet. It had fallen partway down. He watched this guard climb down a little crack in the face and fetch his helmet and then go back up. It turned out that those living in Sardis, the Lydians, were so sure that no one would ever find that secret pass that they didn't guard it.
Right. They had all their troops defending the one side that was open to the land. They didn't defend the wall that was, or the side of the city that backed up against the cliff.
Exactly. Essentially, they could have had 2 or 3 archers there and defended it if they'd known, because the soldiers had to climb up one at a time in single file. But they did it. They went up in the night and they took over the city.
Yeah. That was because they were literally asleep.
Yes, they really were. And it happened again with Alexander.
Yes.
The Greeks took over because they figured out how to get up the secret pass that nobody ever guarded. You'd think that fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah, and there were other, as impressive as the natural defenses were, Sardis should have been impregnable, but it was not only captured, they surrendered to Alexander the Great. Antigonus in 322 BC captured it again. The Seleucids under Antiochus, Antiochus the Great.
Well, once it gets out, hey, the secret pass is here.
Right. But again, if you defend that side where the soldiers have to come at you one at a time, it's pretty easy to defend. That's the reason you build the city there.
Yes.
It's the reason the Jews built Gamla where they did. Because it's really, really hard to get in. And because they kept leaving that side undefended. No one will climb the cliff.
No one ever will.
Except for the 6 armies that did it previously. It'll never happen again.
Here's the thing. Militarily, they were asleep. They weren't paying attention.
And Jesus was drawing on that in this letter to describe the spiritual laziness of the church of Sardis.
Oh, yes. And the church of Sardis, much like the people in the previous towns that had unions, they depended upon the dying unions, the dying merchants. They were dyers of cloth, so they had sheep and they had dye, which takes us to the idea of a white garment that is undyed,
okay. Unsoiled, right.
Unsoiled, exactly.
Yeah.
They made their money through commerce, but they also made their money through money. Early on, the very early Lydians decided to build a site there because of the golden flickers in the stream. Well, it turned out that was gold dust.
Okay.
So they panned the stream, they mined the gold in the hillside, and they figured out a way to separate silver from gold. So the nuggets, they managed to refine the gold and silver so that you had absolutely like 99% pure coins. In fact, coins began in Sardis.
Okay.
You might say they're the first bankers.
And as Jesus said, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, there's a legend about this, and this is interesting because historically, there's another very famous king who lived in Anatolia in the BC period, the Old Testament period, who is connected to Sardis, even though he didn't live there. He was a king of the neighboring kingdom of Phrygia, and his name is Midas.
Yes.
And
many people think he's made up too.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not. In fact, it was a dynastic name. There were several kings named Midas who ruled Phrygia, but there was a belief that Midas was told to bathe in the river Hermus in order to eliminate the curse, because he prayed to Dionysus that everything he touched would turn to gold. He didn't stop and think about it until after his food, his drink, his daughter turned to gold. He prayed for the curse to be removed. He had to go bathe in the river, and hence the origin of the gold dust that flowed down past Sardis.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Sardis, if we're going to talk about the gods, let's take a really quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about the deities who are worshipped there.
Yeah, and surprisingly, well, or not, you'll find that there are some of the ones we've already been talking about connected to these other cities, and we'll tell you who was worshipped in Sardis as Unraveling Revelation continues after this.
NASA, Donald Trump, and a cosmic cover-up of end times proportions. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the largest giveaway of the year, the Project Wormwood Grand Giveaway. When you order Dr. Thomas Horn's new book, The Wormwood Prophecy, from the Skywatch TV store, you'll also receive on DVD the entire 4-part Skywatch TV series on the Wormwood Prophecy, featuring Dr. Thomas Horn and Derek and Sharon Gilbert. But we're just getting started. You'll also receive the never-before-released Best of Defender Publishing ebook collection on data disc, featuring 70 of the most information-packed best-selling books in Defender history. These full-length works are in popular ebook formats, so you can read them on EPUB, PDF, Kindle, and other handheld electronic devices. Give this collection as the ultimate gift to somebody you know this holiday season, or take them with you wherever you go. Valued at over $700 all by itself. But that's not all. With the holidays just around the corner, now's your chance to save big and receive a massive collection of merchandise. Also included in the Wormwood Grand Giveaway is a gargantuan supply of brand new super quality overstock gift books, DVDs, audio sets, survival and organic living books to add to your library or to give away as gifts this holiday season. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $900. Yours now for your donation of only $35 plus shipping and handling. This is the largest giveaway of the year and will be available only while supplies last, so don't delay. The Project Wormwood Grand Giveaway available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order now or call 1-844-750-4985.
It's ground zero in a supernatural war that's lasted for millennia. Now, see it for yourself. Join Skywatch TV for a one-of-a-kind tour of Israel to places you'll never forget. Like mysterious Gilgal Rephaim, older than the pyramids, bigger than Stonehenge, and built to venerate the dead. Banias, sacred to the goat demon Pan. The altar of Joshua, where he declared that he and his house would serve the Lord. Bethel, where Jacob saw a stairway to heaven. And Jerusalem, which God has chosen for his resting place forever. Skywatch TV's Derek and Sharon Gilbert and special guest Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat lead you through the Holy Land from Mount Hermon to the Red Sea, with teaching along the way. And as a special bonus, a 4-day optional extension to Sardinia to see the ancient ziggurat of Monte Dakoti, megalithic tombs of the giants, and the Tophet of Taros, where children were sacrificed to the dark god Baal Haman. Or if you want more time in Sardinia, join us for our separate 8-day tour of the mysterious island. Skywatch TV's 2020 Tour of Israel, October 12th through 25th, with optional tour extensions in Sardinia. For more information and to reserve your place, log on to lipkintours.com.
Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we're talking about a church that, well, zombie church. Mm-hmm. They didn't know they were dead. They didn't know they were asleep. They had a form of godliness, but no substance.
Right. And if we extend the model of the church ages, the ages of church history from the Church of Thyatira, which represents the period during which the establishment church or the hierarchical church became dominant as it collaborated or compromised with the pagan world around it in order to gain in strength politically. The Church of Sardis then would represent the age from about 1517 when Luther nailed his theses on the door till the mid 17th century when the hierarchical church really dominated the world and was really more concerned with its political power.
More of a form of worship,
right.
And not...
But even the Reformation, kicked off by Martin Luther, sadly did not reject the hierarchical model. No. Luther just wanted to reform the church. John Wycliffe was really the reformer who wanted to do away with the hierarchy altogether. So while you had a number of movements to reject the authority of the papacy, again, Luther didn't want to tear down the church. He really hadn't wanted to start his own church. He just wanted to reform what was happening inside the church. So what you wound up with through the Lutheran movement and then some of the other churches that emerged from this in the 16th and early 17th centuries were other churches that still had a hierarchy where you had a political system, if you will. And like the old joke goes, whenever you mix religion and politics, you get politics.
Absolutely, and I think that we have churches like that today. We're going to really briefly, I know that we teased, we're going to talk about the deities, we're going to get there.
Yep.
The same goes today. You have churches that, they do a lot of good works, but they're depending upon their good works, and many of their good works are, frankly, for show. I had a very good friend years ago who no longer wanted to go to a church in her hometown because she said after actually gaining a real relationship with Jesus Christ, she realized everything my husband and I do there is for show. It made
show
us
the
feel
world.
really good
Right.
about ourselves.
Right. Yeah, we're doing this to make us feel like we're making a difference. And we are commanded to take care of the orphans and the widows, and that's why we do what we do at Skywatch TV for Whispering Ponies Ranch. But that's not the ultimate end.
No.
Because this life that we're in is just a small, small subset of reality. We're going to be dead a lot longer than we're alive, and our ultimate destination, where we
Well,
spend
we're going to be
eternity.
sleeping.
Well, sleeping, right. But where we spend eternity is ultimately what we need to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And the good works.
Believers in the Lord, we sleep.
Yes.
The rest, they're dead.
Yeah, good way of putting it. So that you're right. It's that the works become the priority rather than making disciples, preaching the gospel, and getting people to accept Jesus Christ so that they're saved from their sin.
Exactly. Well, the Lord is saying here not only that they're dead, but apparently they're not. They're just partly dead. I've been mostly dead all day. He tells them to wake up. You can't wake up from being 100% dead. So there's something there that he believes is you can still listen.
Those few names who have not soiled their garments.
Exactly.
Right?
But if these who were sleeping, these who were dead dead in their trespasses because they were worshiping other deities outside of church, then they were in big trouble.
Yes.
Artemis was one of the main deities who was worshipped there. In her temple, she was renowned in Sardis for being a healer. In fact, it was said she could raise the dead.
Oh, really?
Yes, another callback. The Lord is taking what they believed, what they relied upon, what they had a name for, and turning it around.
That area of Western Anatolia, Asia Minor, was a real hotbed for Artemis worship, also known as Diana.
I believe also known as Inanna.
Inanna. Of course, Ephesus was the site of the great temple of Artemis, where Paul got into trouble. The silversmiths were losing business because Paul was getting people converted over to the worship of Jesus Christ. But yes, Sardis, another major temple of Artemis there.
Exactly, and they would have had smiths there as well because they had the secret for refining silver and gold, so you had a pure coin.
The connection to raising the dead is interesting because according to the myth, Artemis was... I'm thinking of Demeter and Persephone. Sorry, getting it confused.
Well, yeah, but
there
they
was a
also
connection.
worshipped Demeter because they had a great agricultural thing. And rather than Persephone, because that's often who was worshipped, they chose Demeter, the mother.
Yeah, and Persephone, the connection there is that she had been raped by Hades and was tricked into spending 6 months out of the year in the underworld and 6 months of the year above ground. So there's sort of that rising and dying aspect. But there was the worship of other minor gods that had carried over from Asia Minor into the Greek culture, and Cybele, who was another aspect of Demeter.
Yes, exactly.
And her connection to the god Attis, who was one of the dying and rising
Well,
gods.
Cybele is the actual appellation that was used in Sardis. It was Demeter Cybele. So that's whom they worshipped, and they believed that she had the power to change their lives. The only deity who really can change our lives is Jesus Christ. And they were ignoring him. They were playing at church. We do that today. There are a lot of churches out there who are playing at church.
Yeah. And it's very easy to get caught up in the things of the world and in a variety of ways, getting caught up in politics and making that an end rather than just another aspect of being in this world. I mean, yeah, we can't avoid politics. That's what governs our daily lives. But that's not our mission as Christians. Just as the good works.
Yes.
Not the goal in and of itself. It's a means to an end, and the end is to show the love of Christ so that we can preach the gospel. The church of Sardis, like the medieval church, was about works, was about being in the world and focusing on the temporal realm and not so much the preaching of the gospel. And again, even though Luther rejected what he saw the excesses of the Roman Catholic Church, he didn't want to do away with the hierarchy altogether. He just wanted to reform it. I think we need to be more like John Wycliffe, who said, the hierarchical church is a mistake. That's not how God intended it to be.
No, we have bishops, but they were local.
Right.
They weren't over this big pyramid of people.
Right. It was a network of independent, locally run churches who were answerable only to Jesus Christ and God the Father.
That is so true. And the Lord refers to going back to what you were taught. That implies that they had a teacher. I don't know that we are told anywhere of a specific apostle who went to Sardis. So it's possible that it all goes back to Paul preaching, and we had the what is the name of the dyer of cloth who was converted, and then she took it back
Lydia.
home. Lydia, that's right. It was Lydia. Lydia, oh Lydia. Well, there's a lot more to talk about on Sardis, and one of those is the way the Lord has John describe him in this letter. And I don't think that we're going to have time to cover all that because it refers to the sevenfold aspect of the Holy Spirit, the seven spirits that are in my hand. But those seven angels, those seven stars, they may be all the stars of the seven churches, but I think there's probably another aspect to that.
Yes. And I think we've touched on that in the previous episode, too, as we talk about the seven spirits or the seven eyes in the Old Testament. I believe the book of Zechariah mentions that.
Yeah, the imagery here is beautiful, and here's the thing. He's telling them they're dead. And if you don't wake up, you're going to lose out entirely, and I will just blot you out. But he doesn't appear as a judge. He's not, this face of brass and this, he doesn't appear scary.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something about those spirits and those angels that implies he's the authority to judge.
Well, we'll talk about that next week. I think that will be a good place to pick up. And yes, I was remembering correctly, Zechariah chapter 4.
Yes.
There's a reference back to that. So we'll bring that into the discussion next week because that, I think, just reinforces what we've been finding all along as we go through our study, which is that the more we look at the book of Revelation, the more we find that it's completely interwoven with the Old Testament as well. You can't separate Revelation from the rest of the Bible.
You can't, and I think that that's the problem when you just say, I'm just going to study Revelation, and you don't study the rest of the Bible. It won't make sense.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for watching, and we look forward to continuing our conversation, our discussion of Sardis next week on Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV.